Good afternoon, Conduit. So good to see you all yesterday. Those of you who joined us both here at this location, but also online. We're so grateful that you choose to worship with us and just call this your home. And we welcome you home. This past week, we started our newest series in the Gospel of John. And we started out with how different John opens up his gospel or his good news of Jesus, the story of Jesus, than the rest of the gospels do, where the rest of the gospels kind of start at the beginning of Jesus' life, right? Mary and Joseph and Bethlehem and the manger and all that. John starts at a different beginning, not necessarily the beginning of Jesus' life, but the beginning, right? And how he says, in the beginning, the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. John uses this kind of weird, somewhat strange language, maybe, to really get at his main point. Like the way that he starts his whole gospel really gets at what his main point is that he wants to establish early the identity of Jesus as God, as eternally coexistent with what we maybe sometimes think of as the big God or the main God, that Jesus wasn't somehow subservient or separate from him in the Godhead, but that he was with God and he was God from the beginning. And then he goes on to say that through him, all things were made that have been made. Everything that was made by him, right? And so he continues to kind of solidify this point, right? That Jesus, right, is not some kind of lower form of deity, some lesser function of God, but that Jesus himself was actually the agent of creation, everything that was made. Now, why would these things all matter to us, right? Or why did they matter to John? Well, later in the scripture that we looked at this past week, and we looked at John chapter 1, verses 1 through 18, he comes back to this point of saying, the Word has become flesh and made his dwelling among us. He has come from the Father, full of grace and truth. Now, it's important that we don't see verses 1 through 3 as separate from verse 14 in John chapter 1, because they both communicate something significant about Jesus, is that Jesus is truly and fully and totally God, but that Jesus' existence, his life, doesn't just remain in this far off, distant, infinite or eternal place where we don't have access to him, or whether he's really inconsequential to our lives. But John's gospel is meant to communicate that the God that is infinite, the God that created all things, the God that is truly God, his name is Jesus, came to be among us. Not far away, not separate, not infinitely detached from our lives or our circumstances or our pain or our darkness or our hopelessness, but that he came as the light to give life to all men and women who would receive him. And that God saw it fit to essentially leave the throne in heaven and come and make his dwelling among us. That God wanted to be present with us. That God wanted to be present for us. That God wanted us to know him fully and truly. And the way that we know him fully and truly is through Jesus. I hope that in this series that you would be inspired, encouraged, and challenged to believe. Believe in Jesus. In fact, that's the whole purpose of John's gospel. It's the reason that he actually writes his gospel. He says it in John chapter 20, verses 30 and 31. He says, Jesus did many other miraculous signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these things here are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. There is life in believing in the name and the person and the work of Jesus. I pray that you would be inspired to believe. We love you, Conduit. We are praying for you, and we'll see you, if not before, then this coming Sunday.